A very, very warm welcome to all my listeners from all across the globe. A very good day to each one of you. This is George Nathaniel, and welcome back to my podcast, which is George Nathaniel. My podcast is available across all platforms, and I even have my blog website, which is called georgenathaniel.net. My blogs or my podcast is all about wellness. It's all about happiness, and it's about sharing good experiences to help each other grow in life. Well, what is the topic of my podcast today? As you'll know, I come back at very simple topics and subjects that help us all along our lives. Most of my topics are very generic because each one of us are under different situation, different circumstances. Each one of us has different goals in life. So what is my topic for today? Well, my topic for today is a very interesting topic for each one of us. So my topic for today is yes, your story. Each one of us has their story. Some chose to showcase the story during their midlife, whereas some chose to showcase the story towards the end of their careers. But all of these stories make wonderful, successful, and accomplishments all along life. And each story is as important as the other. So, when we talk about your story, what are we looking at today? So, I've kept this podcast very, very simple because this podcast is to remind you of a timeline. Remind you of a timeline in your own storyline in life. So, like I mentioned, each one of us has super amazing stories, and there's so many wonderful things to cherish or ponder over. So, when we look at your story or individual stories or my story, today there's no key takeaways. Today, each one of us should be making a note for ourselves. Each one of us should be having our own keynote for ourselves. Each one of us should set a vision and goal for ourselves. So, what am I looking at today? Well, to make it very, very simple, I have divided your story into two parts. So, as each one of us, or as individuals, as we sit down and as we analyze over our lives, what are the few things that we can look at? Well, the first part of the two things I would say that we should actually look at is where do we stand in our lives at the moment? That is very, very important. The next thing that I would say is how much more can we optimize over our ongoing efforts? Number three, I would say, how aligned are we with our future endeavors or goals in life? Number four, I would say this is very, very important for each one of us. How would we like our storyline to be? So, as each one of us sits down and makes a note of our own individual ongoing stories, and as we understand where we are at the moment, I would like to relate to the second phase of it. So, when we come back to the second phase of it, what I would look at is so in the second phase, I would say number one is setting priorities on tougher obstacles or goals in life. Because as we grow and as we dream bigger and as we achieve bigger, the obstacles and goals even get tougher. And it's important to set priorities. Number two, I would say is the transformation over expectations or personal developments. So as we climb up the ladder, we need to understand that there will be a lot of transformation and there will be a lot of personal developments. So how we cope with them and how we upgrade ourselves is very, very important. Number three, this is as important as the number four of the first part, which says how would you like a story to be? So here in number 3, this is very important. It says, how can you better your storyline? So when we sit down together, or when we sit down individually, when we sit down by ourselves, when we understand our life, when we evaluate our goals, and once we understand how our story, how our lives can get better, these are things that we need to start working on. Life is never as simple. Expectations are as big and wide as the sky. And most importantly, everything depends on self efforts, results, and the focus to get to our goals. I will not quote or not say anything, but when I relate to myself, I would go back to a play that we have done in our school, and I will just maybe tweak a few lines of that play, or to tweak a few lines of content that was used in that play. It says, you can be anything in your own universe. Anything in your own world is possible if you want to be. So when you give it more insights and when you give it a thorough thought, you would understand that to accomplish something, you first got to see it in your own universe. You need to believe it in your own universe. You need to do it for yourself in your first universe, or in your own universe. So as you listen to my podcast today, I'm sure each one of us would spare that time to sit down and look at their own storyline. Each one of us would understand that yes, there is a scope to accomplish bigger things in life. And there's a bigger scope in changing the storyline over our lives. I always say it's very important for each one of us to share good experiences, share good learnings. It's very important for each one of us to be a helping hand to the other. It's very important for each one of us to build wellness all around. And what goes around comes around. Each one of us know that. I hope you like listening to my podcast, which is your story. And as each one of us works towards a story, I wish you all wellness. I hope you like listening to my podcast. This is George Nathaniel. Like I mentioned, my podcast is available across all platforms. Come and listen to my podcast. Put in your requests. I'll try my level best to come and speak about your subject or your topic or share my experiences on your request. You can also visit my blog website, which is georgenathaniel.net. I wish you all a wonderful time ahead. Thank you for listening to my podcast. This is George Nathaniel.